That's where it started. And that's also where I started when I started going to regularly practicing yoga. And that combination and really having a practice of yoga where it was like I really learned namaste. I really learned the light in me sees the light in you, and that resonated. And it was like, yes, and probably from my upbringing too. It's like that's what matters. That's what we're here for. That's what we have to see in each other. That's what we have to keep being reminded of, right? And you need to hear it from other people and say it to other people. So I think, I would say my practice with all of that goes in phases, probably with the season, probably with my mood, probably with what I have going on in my life. But I'm so grateful that there is the root of that because if I didn't have that root, like that early on, I don't know if I could say yes.
Mhm.
I would probably say, well, every once in a while, I really, my husband and I will sit and talk about everything we're grateful for,
Right.
once in a while.
Yep.
And same with my friends but it also at the dips, it seems to be very automatic.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, dipping is a gratitude practice, right? It's
Yeah, it
like
really is.
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't deny the power of how grateful you are that, I can be at the beach year round in Maine and appreciate it and be enjoying it and embracing it. That's amazing. But I think gratitude practice, to me, that's ritual. And to me, whether you kind of go in and out of it, I
Yep.
feel like I always am pulled back to it from things I've created, of course,
Mhm.
but also just the root of where I've learned some of the importance of it.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Kind of right, because you are very you grateful. Like
Mm,
hear it out of your mouth every time I see you, right? It is part of your language. And so
yeah.
so
Yeah, part of the language. Thank you. That's a nice way of putting it. And
mhm.
because I feel it so deeply and
Yeah,
I understand a lot of what people are going through and to show up and to be raw and bring yourself to something new or, just being vulnerable. It's like, wow, people should know how grateful, you are for that.
right. That people trust the community that you have created to show up in however they are, wherever they're at, kind of emotionally or physically, or all of those pieces.
Yeah.
And I think that's the power of community, is because I said community would be one of those things we'd talk about too, is is that community. And
Yeah.
here's an interesting thought because, you know, pre-COVID, there was lots of community, right? There was lots of, it was easy to find community. And COVID came and, we all had to kind of become much more protective. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who don't want community. But are you finding maybe that there's a kind of an uptick in people seeking community more
That's a
so?
great question. Yeah, I think one of the things about COVID is it sparked, if someone was introverted to begin with, or maybe had some generalized anxiety or social anxiety, it really sort of validated that for
Yeah,
them and allowed them to be allowed them to be more isolated
right.
for
Yeah,
good or bad,
right.
where their comfort or discomfort. It created sort of like, oh, okay, I can sort of I don't have to go do that, right? I don't
Right.
have to go be out there. So I think ultimately that hurt us as a society, as a
Mm.
culture. And I think there's a lot of that still exists, that residual is still there, of course, and maybe it'll be there for years. I don't know how post-pandemic worlds work.
Right.
Um, so we will see, but I do believe that the gift that came out of it is the uptick that is going to happen because the pendulum swings. And so we're starting to see all the consequences of isolation.
Yeah.
And it is astounding to me how I keep learning over and over and over. It's not necessarily the content, it is the community.
Yeah.
It's just simply the being together. It is literally connecting our energies, yes, our words, but it's just, oh, I belong. I have a place to be. Oh, that person is going through that too, or oh, that person's laughing and that made me laugh. And oh, suddenly I'm joyful and I just feel better. It's sort of that simple sometimes,
Right, kind of the energetic shifts that just happen by virtue of being in community. So, yeah. I want to ask because I was not able to make it this weekend.
Uh,
So Sunday in Portland was 1,000 women gathering for a cold water dipping experience that looks like it had to have been kind of an out of this world experience.
it was out of this world experience. I I can feel my adrenaline just you talking about it, like ramp up again,
Yeah.
It was well, I know again, I'm someone that really thrives around being around people. I feed off it and I sort of need it,
Yeah.
and so I it amps me up and I love it's funny because I don't necessarily love all crowds and I do love my solitude, but something like that, it's hard, it's almost hard to be present in it because it's so energetic and it's so high, that you're just sort of like absorbing it.
Yeah.
And then later, I've been sort of like processing it all week or all
Mhm.
weekend,
Couple
past
days,
couple of days.
right?
Yeah, it's only been a couple of days. It feels like it was a week ago. So yes, the energy of that, and that's a group in South Portland. Two women started around COVID time as well. So it just
Mhm.
goes to show you, I think a lot of people got in the ocean during that time.
Because it was the only place you could go.
It was the only place you could go. Yep. And extreme things drive you to do extreme things, you know? Um, so so we gathered, it was supposed to be Saturday, so I think the numbers and I decreased a little bit just because people probably couldn't go. It didn't feel that way though, it really but the other thing that was so interesting about it, it was so many people, yet you had space. It was non-chaotic. It was calm in its expansive energy. There's so many people there
Right.
being so joyful, but it was somehow calm too,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And you just
Amazing.
felt, yeah, there was not an ounce of feeling separate. There
Cool.
was not an ounce of isolation. I mean, this is my experience, of course.
Right, right, right.
It was just an uplifting moment that everyone was sharing. And there was sort of a pause before we went in the water, and everyone's sort of looking around, just sort of waiting for the masses to go in. I mean, I don't know even if one person started the walk-in. It was just like very much in unison, you
Very
know?
cool. Very cool. Patty, you had a question?
I was going to write it. Yes.
Hi,
Which,
Patty.
what beach? Hi, Amy. What beach was this at? I didn't hear
Oh,
anything about
it
it.
was at Willard Beach in South Portland. It's right along the Southern Maine Community College campus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they
Nice.
do it they've already got the weekend identified for next year. It's kind of that first weekend in March. So,
It's on International Women's Day.
yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. And it's free and you just have to register. I assuming it's going to still be free next year.
I would
Mhm.
think, right. I would think that they would kind of, that's how you
I think so too.
pull such an amazing community together, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about the benefits of cold water dipping? Because I think I know how it's impacted. Well, we talked about that a little. How has it impacted you, Amy? Right? I chatted about how you asked me, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like can you
Yeah.
share a little bit of how kind of that journey has impacted you? And then maybe we can kind of talk about what the benefits are of it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Those kind of go hand in hand. To me, it was really trying out a form of medicine and it working.
Mhm.
So it was, at the time, it was 2021. Um, so it had been COVID. I had to close my business during that time, and both of my parents had passed away around COVID. And it was just so much intense all at once. And again, not having other options of, dealing with grief in general, it just kind of popped into my head on New Year's Day. And I actually wish I knew exactly what
What
spark,
triggered it?
yeah, yeah. Um, but my girlfriend and I went to the ocean and we went in and I didn't I knew that people did this, but I didn't research it a lot before I did it myself. And I felt so good after that I was like, well, why wouldn't I do that again?
Right.
And because I was searching for some kind of structure in my life, right, at that time and some grounding. So these are
Right.
some of the benefits already. And ritual, I did it the next day and then I did it the next day. And the dopamine effect does have an addictive quality, but it's a very natural one. And so, you know, no matter what happened that day or what I was feeling that day, the intensity of the waves or the intensity of the cold matched it, canceled it out, took it away. I won't even say took it away. It helped balance it is probably a better way to put it. And so it became a habit. It became a habit. And I had time to do it every day, you know?
Mhm.
And I had a beach, near me, which was is very fortunate. And so the benefits immediately were really helping me move through grief. So I believe it has a lot of power in that specific way.
Mhm.
It is very understanding of grief because it is so intense. Like I said, it matched it. The power of it matched the intensity. And to me, that was very healing. And then, and then when I started going with other people, we would sort of talk about like, oh, what is this doing for you? And one of the biggest things is how present makes you be. It's forced presence. And you can meditate yourself into presence and breathe yourself into presence or run around in presence, right? But nothing compares to that kind of presence where you have no choice. It just everything, the clean slate happens immediately. So it's a very efficient practice too, I mean, it doesn't take long and you're in nature, you're in salt water, you're stressing your body just enough. So, that word hormesis means to take something that would be toxic in a larger amount and use it to build resilience slowly. So, you do it just enough for the cells to be like, oh, I got to work a little harder here to stay strong in this environment. And then you get out, and those cells are kind of used to doing that. And then they sort of build the resilience more and more. They also activate your brown fat cells, which really are responsible for your metabolism. So, in terms of utilizing the fat and the sugar in your blood and making it to create heat. And so if people don't want to dip because they hate being cold, you can tell them that this practice actually helps heat you up in general.
Yeah.
You know, it increases your metabolism, for
Right.
lack of a better phrase. Yeah. Um, Now the goal isn't to, oh, well, if it does that, then I should be doing it more or longer. That's not a thing. That's not what we're here for. And that obviously goes into the danger zone. Um, that's another thing about the community I find is like there's an innate knowledge of when to get out. And you're kind of helping each other get out too, right? You get out, that gives permission to someone else to get out too. Um, so, and you are adapting to cold, and that's a helpful thing. That's a helpful thing living in Maine. That's a helpful thing if you are in water a lot,
Right.
or if you work on the water, or yeah.
And I think what I love about, especially kind of in the York Harbor group community, is it is a very you do what works for you. So some people go knee high, some people go waist high, some people go under, some people are in for a half an hour, and others are in for 2 minutes. And it is such the acceptance
Yes.
of you do what is right for you. And I think that that's
Yes.
such an important message that just kind of filters through life is that, each person needs to kind of do what's right for them and to listen to their body and honor their body, um, and 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 treat it with love and care, and
Yes.
and and that is just an amazing space that you have to, you have to do
Yes.
that.
You have to do that. Lisa, you nailed it. So that is probably the number one thing. It's how people dip should look as different as we are each different from each other, right? So each time you dip, you're going to dip differently. And then each time you dip, you're going to dip different than the other person with you. And that makes the most sense in the world because you're coming into it with your body makeup, your mood, your history, your health, your, risk factors, your fears, your traumas, your history. So the only way dipping makes sense is to do it your way. And that's tricky because we also want to learn from the research and we want to learn and, use the dipping the best we can for our health. Hi, Laura.
Yes. Hi, Laura.
So it is very special, and that's something I think you really learn when you start doing it, is this is such a community practice, but it is such a personal practice. And also less is more. This is just about getting cold, feeling it, breathing, being with it, allowing yourself to feel a little bit of that relaxation and then getting out. And it can feel really good. So you can linger. And so that's why we're all there together and we have buddies and we don't let people linger too long. But it just you said it. It's so has to be that way. And we don't have a lot of other things that are necessarily that way. It's like we compare, we're human nature to compare, like, oh, you're a really good skier. I want to learn those ski skills to become a better skier. It's like you're not necessarily becoming a better dipper. I think you're better dipper if you're listening to yourself more, you're helping someone else with their dip. You're getting out with them because that's giving them permission to get out. Like that's what people really want. Like they want to be seen and heard and understood. Nobody
Yes.
wants to feel like they are doing it wrong or they just can't do it or they can't breathe right. And it's like, that's not a thing.
I love that, Amy, because I think that that's so spot on, that being seen and heard, and kind of being just kind of witnessed in the space of doing right for you in that moment. And it's just such a wonderful community that is, I think, really felt.
Thank
So
you. And
yeah,
that's probably the number one thing I want people to feel. And obviously I can't control how people feel. But but the Maya Angelou quote, people will remember what you said. They won't remember what you said or what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
right,
And that is a perfect example of, if I'm going to create a community, that's what I want it to be, because I don't have the answers to everything. And there's a lot of questions that come with something so intense. And some say, well, technically, if someone has a heart condition, they want to, be careful of that. But there's a lot of things you need to be careful of. And so if we just talk about heart conditions, that can kind of put a little bit of fear.
hmm,
There's a lot of fear-based stuff, and there's a lot of ways to dip. You can just go down and be cold at the river's edge with your tribe. That counts, and no doctor is going to tell you not to do that, most likely.
right,
So there's some absolutes that sort of have to get thrown around sometimes, but and if you're writing a book or if you're telling the masses, you have to be more careful, but
right,
you want to talk to that person. And instead of going right to these absolute rules and do's and don'ts, it's like, what's your intention? Why are you here? Why do you want to do this? That kind of thing is a little better to look at, I think, than like, oh, if you have a heart condition, then you shouldn't do it. I think there needs to be a conversation at least, because there's people that have been cured, they would say, have been cured of their ailments, that there's no research necessarily on that, but
right,
it's
right,
happening.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My phone's buzzing. Um, so I know that there's a handful of dippers here, but I also anticipate that some of the people who signed up are not dippers and they'll get a copy of this and I know we have some non-dippers here as well. If somebody wanted to start, what would be your recommendations, Amy?
Mm. Well, I would say to find at least a friend or 20, that you want to find a group that is near you, or please reach out, because if you're in the York area, we want to have you with us. Um, I think everyone starts it so differently. Everyone starts differently.
Right.
Some people just start because they're like, I did this as a kid. I'm just going to run in my bare feet and I don't need any stuff. And I'm just going to, do it. And it might be the best thing they ever did, and then 2 times later, they're like, actually, I think you guys are all wearing those booties. I think I need to get so once you start realizing it's not just an in and out situation one time,
Right. And
then
it depends on when you start too.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
Exactly. So right now, technically, is the coldest waters in Maine. March time, March, April are technically the coldest waters. I don't know, but is the air is cold? Is the wind chill is cold? So all those factors taken into account. I think having just the real warm non-cotton layers, are pretty key. So you have your towel to dry up, you've got your robe to put on after. The extremities, keep them warm. The 100% wool socks, under the booties are amazing. Can be
Yeah.
a game changer. Borrow booties from someone if you can, and then decide if you want to purchase them, right? But they're a good investment if you're going to be doing this. Um, the zip up booties are awesome. I spent like a year with pull-on booties and with Velcro, and I injured myself more just trying to get out of them and then tripping on the Velcro because it gets wet and sandy and it doesn't work anymore. I mean, those are the details that it was like, oh wow, I never thought of that, those little things. Um, and it's true, you want it to be, well, we want it to be easy because we're humans and we want things to be easy. Nothing about this is easy. But so you want the extra stuff to be easy. I really want to be able to just put on a few things, go and come back. If you don't have the luxury of living close to where you're dipping, you want to get a routine of like the quick change, or not be afraid to just have a really warm coat or robe over your naked body, whatever, just something that's easy. Yeah. These
And
guys could
I
tell you.
think what's neat too is that it kind of just like I've dipped with you and I've dipped with the handful of girls that I first started with here in Hampton and then down in Salisbury. And what I love is in every space, you learn new tips and tricks on
Mhm.
what works for people
Yes.
and between the wool socks and then bringing a jug of hot water to rinse
Mm.
off my shoes, but I rinse off my feet so then my feet are warm and my hands like
Yes.
always. It's just so fun to learn. I mean, but you have to kind of put yourself out there and ask those questions, you know
You
what I
do.
mean?
And
um
maybe feel what it's like to not do those things
but
first.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. When you're done dipping after a dip,
Mhm.
what's the difference for you, Amy, kind of when you dip and on the days that you don't dip?
Oh, that's so great. That's a great question. Well, I did get the tub in my backyard because um I guess because I couldn't really get enough. I loved being able to do it first thing in the morning if I didn't have a lot of time,
Yeah.
right? I couldn't drive down to the beach or it was just it, and I just wanted to be sort of private and do have that sort of more solitude dip. There's the private dip we talked about and then the community dip, right? So that's sort of a gratitude practice in and of itself, getting into that in the morning, sunrise, being able to hear the birds, look at the nature, 2 minutes or whatever it is, however
Right.
long it is. It's such a short amount of time, but it really feels significant, because you're nothing else matters in that moment. Um, but wait, can you tell me your question one more time, Lisa? I want to make sure I
Oh,
answered it.
yeah.
Oh, after. Oh,
I
oh,
can
I remember. I
I can
remember.
remember it. How you feel like on the days you dip versus the
Yeah.
days you don't dip, if you
Oh,
feel different, kind of energetically,
yeah.
however.
If I skip like a day, right? If I dip every other day, for example, um, I'm pretty satisfied. I feel like things are,
Right.
pretty level.
Yeah.
Um, there was a time where the tub was just frozen solid, and for whatever reason, I wasn't able to get to the beach, like maybe for a week or almost 2 weeks.
Mm,
And that was tough. I started to get like a little like angry about it. And then I didn't like that I was angry about it because that's not the point either. So that was a whole lesson in of itself. And then I had a moment where I was like, you know what? If it is so cold and frozen and it's topped with snow, and maybe I just need to become aware of how this season is not saying it's time to dip right now. So I
I
was
love
trying
that.
to get
Yeah.
on board with the season being right, the seasons I
Right.
trust
Sometimes
for the most part.
it's not the season, whether it's right. I mean, we've had some crazy weather, and then some of the illnesses have just lasted forever, that it's kind of like
Yeah,
you got to kind of listen to your body and take care of your
exactly.
body before you can take care of your body,
Yes.
like
Yes. And I find that if I feel like something might be brewing, like a little sickness under there, like, or just everyone around me has been sick, I find that's a good time to dip.
yeah.
Once the sickness, if it's ramped up, which I've become a lot more immune. I knock on wood since the dipping, but it's not quite worth it to put your body, your body's working hard to heal. So I wouldn't recommend that when you're actually sick.
Right.
But
But I found that too. I'm glad to hear that because I said to somebody recently, I was like, no, I know I can remember going, do I go or don't I go? I kind of feel like, I might be fighting something. And then I remember one day something happened. I said, hell with this, I'm going. And it was like right. You feel better. Like it just kind of it's a reset, almost,
yes,
so
yeah. And that was sort of my same rule with massage, if you're sort of like just kind of feeling a little crappy, but you're not sick,
yeah,
it can kind of nip it, right? You probably
right,
need the rest. You need that physiology to reset
right,
and to bring you out of some inflammation and out of stress. And but if you're really sick,
right.
that's your body telling you to quit it. But so that was hard for me to not be able to dip during those times,
Yes.
because it does feel like medicine, and so it feels like someone took it away.
Right, right, right.
Um, but then I had surgery in November. I had a hysterectomy in November, and so that was a very humbling. I couldn't dip for 6 weeks maybe. And that was interesting in and of itself. And I think, that was sort of okay. I can say that now. I don't think I thought it was okay then, but but it was a lesson for sure. It was a lesson. It was a lesson of, oh, someone else is telling me, or my body or my condition is telling me I can't do that. I wasn't that comfortable with that, but I listened. I listened, and it was the right thing. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Now,
Yeah.
what's interesting is I was just thinking about s- s- last winter, my brother and his kids, he lives on a lake and they
Mm.
dug a hole just to put their face in the water.
Mm.
Have you ever tried that, Amy? I'm just have
Yeah, yes. And that's something we would teach the kids in school, or anybody really, that just splashing the water on the face is an amazing, and especially if you have a bowl of ice water and you really submerge the whole
yeah,
face. Even if I'm not a big fan of holding your breath in general, but if you do, especially if people are struggling with panic and they feel comfortable putting their face and sort of holding their breath for a bit, in that, that diving reflex does kick in and brings the heart rate and the blood pressure down pretty quickly. And so, you just your face, you can get out of it quickly as
right,
well. But it's a pretty special tool,
yeah.
and usually accessible for people.
Right. Well, I was thinking of it as one of those, right? Like you can take a bowl of ice water and put your face in and kind of have some similar experiences, which
Yes.
actually is good kind of food for thought. Because when you're sick or surgery, like I didn't even
Yes.
think to try to do that, like when I was just had this crud. But in the future, maybe I will be like, oh, I could at least try that. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And for
Yes.
people where it's harder to kind of get out and about
Out
and
and about.
in the cold, and you know what I mean, that could be a way to kind of experience some of the benefits of it. So
It's a really good daily practice. If you're not dipping entirely. And sometimes I would go stand in my tub, and then just when I couldn't actually fully submerge after the surgery, I just stood in my tub and put my face in it, trying to get all the parts of me in it that I could. So it also is very humorous.
Yeah.
I mean, that we should probably really acknowledge the humor involved in dipping in general,
okay.
because you can't really not laugh at a dip.
No, No,
Yeah.
because you definitely, right, experience a lot of, right, when there's lots of seaweed and you come out and you are like,
Yeah. Yeah, covered in seaweed and freezing. I mean, that's funny. And then sometimes you just acknowledge like what you're actually doing. And you're like, this is very funny. I mean, it's people think you're crazy and it's funny. And laughter is one of my favorite things to do. So it's another benefit. Patty has a
Patty?
question.
Yeah,
Yes, oh, yeah. Well, thank you about the bucket of ice water because I'm an hour from beach, so it's not really feasible for me to do. But that so simple,
yeah.
and how it hasn't occurred to me before because I have followed Lisa with this, and in fact was at her mother's house the night that Chronicle had it on. New Hampshire Chronicle had the that on. So that is a
Yes.
great idea just for that. And what's interesting, because I too am retired from nursing, but that's actually a modality of treatment for a cardiac
Yes.
diagnosis of SVT.
Yes.
So I've always found it funny, here we are in a technical environment and wires and, you know, everything, and then a bucket of ice water to try to, and you do put the person's face in it. Well, force them, but, to do that. And sometimes it works. So that was like, here we are using nature,
Yeah.
not big
Yes.
pharma, not high tech, not, and it was, and so sometimes it works. Oh, well,
Patty,
oh,
I'm so glad you said that because when I first heard, and it's not incorrect or bad advice, if you have a heart condition or, troubles regulating blood pressure, maybe don't dip. I think there's a lot to be said about that. But um I wondered about that when I first heard that, and I thought, you know what? It doesn't sound like an absolute for me, like an absolute
Mhm.
don't for me. So I remember calling my uncle after I had heard that. He's a retired pediatrician, but and he also struggles with AFib himself,
hmm,
atrial fibrillation. And he told me, he said, actually, he's like, it's been used for so long to treat heart conditions. So it's just one of those things that it's too scary to prescribe, right?
Right.
So I think we can start prescribing the face in the ice water,
hmm,
I mean, I feel comfortable doing that. But and here we are, a bunch of us just running into the ocean. I mean, it is funny how healthy, how therapeutic this is and how probably underutilized it is because it's just been conditioned to be crazy. And
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
yeah, but I also think that, we are a much more sedentary community. We are much more, right, the electronics. So we don't play in nature with the same frequency or the same playful joyfulness that we used to. And so I think that it also brings that grounding and play, and it's play in nature. I mean, I think you go watch the group dip in York and you know that there's a lot of people playing, like, because you hear the laughter and you just hear the joy. And I think you can, I don't know, Jay could attest, right? Do you feel all the joy and the happiness just watching all of the people playing?
Yeah, yes. I have an interesting position in it all since I've gone to several dips and not have gone in once. I do
yeah.
appreciate, Amy, how you make sure that I'm included in part of the community.
Oh,
So
good. Good. Well,
and
you are.
I just listening to the conversation tonight. There's such a the activity is so compressed in time and urgency of it, I think creates that intensity of bond that you're talking about. Like
Oh, I
Yes.
love that. You're right.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
and even without going in, I can definitely
Mhm.
feel that. So
Yeah, that's very cool to hear. I love the supporters on the beach, that they've got a totally different view of it all.
Right.
I've often had to answer questions since I'm not in the water.
Right.
There's
Right.
a lot of yes, no, no, no. This isn't a one-time thing.
Right.
Yes, it happens regularly over a period of time, but so I try to do justice.
Thank you.
I did dip before Lisa, did I not?
Yes,
During,
you
I
did,
guess it was
dear.
during COVID. I must have. So I understand the benefit of it, and I'm sure when I'm waiting for a better, not such a cold climate to reacquaint myself. So
Yeah,
I
I
probably
hear that.
dipped. I probably dipped like 90 straight days every morning.
Several years ago,
So
right?
yeah,
Yep. So,
Wow. Yeah. Usually there is
uh,
a stint of daily, I think, when people start.
yeah.
They get really into it.
Right, right. My goal for 2024 was to dip once a month. And then I started in May, and I think I went like twice a week. And then probably in the fall, I think I could have hit 3 or 4 times a week. And so,
Well,
right.
that's
So there's a, yeah, I mean, it's an ebb and flow. And I think you kind of have to recognize that you do what works for your schedule and all of those pieces. So we're coming up on an hour, so I just wanted to be able to give an opportunity if anybody else had questions or kind of things that they kind of takeaways or reflections, if anybody had anything that they wanted to share.
I read recently that in the Norwegian countries that or the Sweden, Finland, that doctors don't prescribe medications for the most part, that their prescription for you is take a walk in nature. I think just their whole community and culture always fosters and promotes that. But if someone is, not like that, the physicians will actually say you need to walk in the woods for 25 minutes every day, walk barefoot when you can, and again, talking about grounding, communing with nature, and, getting revived and revitalized from nature.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patty. I think you're right. And I think we're really starting. I think there is a trend starting to be okay with those kind of prescriptions again. I
Yeah.
think
I hope so.
I think we realize the crises we're in with either medical systems or mental health care access, etc. I
And
think we're bringing
medication.
things back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was just talking about this at work today about group therapy coming back, because it's about group. First of all, if it's a group, often if there's no limit, right? Group means more people can be a part of it. And then it's really the community. Again, it's not necessarily about what you're learning about, or the focus doesn't have to be on your struggle. It's the focus is on how good it can feel to be in community and how
Mhm.
healing that is. So I hope and think, and I think all of us that are curious about this and all of us that are practicing it are part of that,
Yeah.
because,
Mhm.
pendulum swinging the other way.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and as you had said, Amy, earlier about what COVID really divided us and isolated us. And for those of us that are social and are used to and want to be with other people, yes, it did impact those who, felt maybe, again, more qualified. Well, I don't want to chime in. And I think those are the ones that probably suffered. I know we did too, um, being outgoing people. But I think, and I'm hoping that that is what I'm kind of seeing is that we've emerged from it. And so people are getting together more often. And you're talking about group therapy. And, even the National Historical Society has programs that bring people together. And I mean, I'm just craving it. I think that,
Yeah.
and I do hope
Yeah.
it does come back with, and again, gaining that sense of community. I agree with
Yes.
that
Yeah.
completely.
Yes.
I was
And
raised in Maine like that too. So
You were.
Amy,
Oh.
I
Amy,
was.
Lisa,
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Maureen.
I just want to thank you for mentioning how funny it is and how much play it is, because
Yes.
that's what I tend to get out of it.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
I think that's part of what I love about it too. I think,
Yeah.
right, just to play.
We want a chance, we want a chance to get back to being a kid. Like we all have the kid in us, and there's not a lot of opportunity for that in our culture. And there's a reason why I think a lot of midlife women are attracted to dipping.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
right,
It's
it's a
permission to
time-
play.
it's a time in our life that we get to do that again and be supported in that, and maybe have an extra minute to do that if we're lucky.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I think you've named my top three reasons why I love dipping is the play, the connection to nature, and the community. And I too hope that, I really feel like people are starting to realize all the different ways you can connect, that it can be so easy as walking into the water together.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Ellen.
Thank you,
Exactly.
Ellen. Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here. So wonderful to have a fun group here. And thank you, Amy, so much for
Thank
making
you
time
so
for
much.
this. So
Yeah, I appreciate all of you being here, and I wish you were in front of me in person. So please be that way sometime.
Yeah. Thank you both. It was great.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks a
Thank you
lot.
guys for being here. And so I forgot to hit record in the beginning, but
Well, you got most of it.
but I got
Yeah.
most of it exactly. And so I know that there was a good number of people who didn't make it, so I will send it out to them. But thank you all. So thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Really
Bye,
enjoyed it.
ladies.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I can come visit.
Stop.